Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in, being a part of the conversation. Folks, we've got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, let's talk about the latest development with this Tyre Nichols case, which shows in a new set of documents that there really wasn't any reason for police to pull over Tyre Nichols. Are you serious? Yeah, I'm going to give you some of the details around this situation. Also, we're going to also talk about with the CEO of the National Headache Foundation to talk about their new operation and initiative, Operation Brainstorm, which is a set of listening sessions they're having around the country about the healthcare needs for veterans and those who have served in our armed forces. So we'll have that conversation up next. Also later on, folks, can we talk about Black students less likely to finish and complete college because of psychological stress and discrimination? Yeah, we'll have that conversation and a whole lot more. So stay with us. It's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to get to, so let's jump right in. Here's the big conversation that people are having based on a new report that has come out about the Tyre Nichols case. There are so many, there's still reverberations from this case being felt as we have been reporting in terms of the number of officers who have been disciplined and involved in this case, to the policies and the procedures of how this situation got out of hand the way it did. To now, folks, here's a new development in the case. Take a look at this, and this is just so heartbreaking, to say the least, that this man died in the hands of law enforcement for nothing. Here's the latest, folks. And I want you to take a look at this. This is out of the New York Post, and other outlets have been reporting on this, that the police department has condemned, of course, the blatant unprofessional behavior of its five of its officers displayed during the fatal January 7th traffic stop, and asked that they never be permitted to work in law enforcement again. Now, according to documents released on Tuesday by the Tennessee Peace Officers Standards and Training Commission, former officer Demetrius Haley was driving an unmarked car and wearing a black hoodie when he pulled Tyre Nichols over for a routine traffic stop last month. The records show he and another officer had their guns drawn when they ripped Nichols from his car. Haley did not have his body camera turned on when he stopped Nichols. All five cops were charged with murder, violated body cam rules by either not running their cameras through the entire attack or taking off their vests with cameras attached. And this is according to the document. During the assault, Haley sprayed Nichols in the eye with a chemical irritant and kicked him in the torso as three other officers were handcuffing him, the documents say. Now, other officers kicked Nichols in the face, punched him, or struck him with a baton. Haley also took two photographs on his cell phone of a bloodied and handcuffed Nichols while he was propped against the car as he was unable to sit up on his own. He sent them to 6 different people, 2 fellow cops, a civilian employee of the police department, and a female acquaintance. And I know that's really heavy for us to share that with you. So we hope that that didn't trigger anyone. But this is what this situation has devolved to. Now, the crazy part about this, folks, is that when Haley pulled over Nichols, Tyre Nichols, he did not explicitly say what the violation was. And according to the Memphis Police Department, there's no evidence that Tyre Nichols broke the law or any traffic violation. I want us to just think about this. That according to the Memphis Police Department, according to the Tennessee Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission, there's no evidence to show that Tyre Nichols broke the law. None. So how do you reconcile that? How do you process that? Considering this man was brutally beaten by police officers for something that, according to the documents, showed that he did not do. And the fact that Demetrius Haley never told Tyre Nichols what he was in violation of. Folks, I wanted to have this conversation with you. So I want you to post in the comments, your comments in the chat section. We're streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, of course, blackstarnetwork.com. And share with me your thoughts on this. This is another piece of this case as more and more is being released about this case, about that fatal January 7th traffic stop. The fact that now they're showing that he was Tyre Nichols never had a chance. He never had a chance. So he wasn't told what he did was wrong. What he did was wrong, right? Demetrius Haley approached the car in a black hoodie. This is also a part of the records. He approached the car in a black hoodie while he was on a phone call. And you can't hear this on the body cam or on some of the cameras, camera footage that we have been exposed to. But according to those records, you can hear Demetrius Haley using curse words while he's approaching the car and having a conversation while he's stopping Tyre Nichols. He's having a conversation, folks. And so when we look at this situation, I mean, there were so many violations of protocol, a policy of training, and you can't tell me, you can't say, well, we need to put some sort of training. You know, a police officer knows that they are not supposed to be on a cell phone when they're pulling somebody over. They already know that. That's like basic training. When you are doing a traffic stop, you're not on your cell phone. You're not approaching a car in a black hoodie. Let me go to y'all culture crew. This is really sad. This is truly, truly sad. And in this case, the more we're learning about this case, the more it's beyond heartbreaking. Culture crew, let me hear from you. Post your comments in the chat and let's talk a little bit about this latest development. Conscious thought. You said it was a hit. Well, I don't know, conscious thought. It could have been. I can't tell you, brother. I can't tell you. But it could have been. It's certainly, I don't know. The fact that Haley sent the photos to the officers, the civilian employee for it. And why would you send your photo to a female acquaintance? What is that about? Now the conspiracies are going to start to emerge around what really was the motive behind this whole situation. Did Demetrius Haley know Tyre Nichols' car and knew he was driving the car? I don't know. Jawan, thank you so much for checking in, Conscious Thought. Jawan, you checked in and said they used that old quote-unquote reckless driving excuse knowing their cameras were turned off. They created a story to justify their violence. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That could have accounted for, Jawan, the lapse of time that you had the paramedics on the scene and they didn't leave the scene for 20-something minutes. Could account for it could account for a lot of things. And don't forget now, you got 7 other officers that were involved in this case that were disciplined. They weren't fired, they were disciplined as a result of their involvement of this case. So I don't know. It could have been, and we also know that according to these new set of documents, that they falsified the police report. The police report details were not true. The ones that were submitted, of course, from those 5 former officers, they falsified that. Tiana, thank you so much for checking in, Jawan. Tiana, you said it seems like they were looking for him. Again, I don't know. It could have been, or I don't know. But this is way beyond being unprofessional. Way beyond. taking photos, stopping him for no reason, way beyond. Thank you, Tiana. Red Rum Man, you checked in and said the police chief has to go. I know everyone wants to praise her for firing the murderers, but she knew how violent and reckless those officers were. Absolutely. I think that she can't be off the hook for that. And I remember talking to our sister, retired Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey from the LAPD. She made the point that police chiefs know who the bad apples are on a local, state level. These agencies, these departments know, folks. They already know. I think it was Demetrius Haley, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm going to ask my team just to double check. But if it was Haley, I believe he already had a number of personnel complaints against him for violations in other cases. Again, why would you empower him to be on some elite specialized unit to handle narcotics and other issues, knowing his behavior, knowing his temper, knowing how he moves? Real Brooklyn, you checked in and said, honestly, we will never know the whole truth behind this. Some form of cover-up has happened, and unfortunately, this has more to protect the department rather than the police officers. It could have been all of that. I mean, unfortunately, I think you're right on that, Real Brooklyn. And I also think that it protects everybody. It protects the integrity of the department. And you're talking about the integrity of the officers. It protects everybody. Now, Demetrius Haley, he joined the force, folks, and he only been on the force for in August of 2020, he joined. He was previously accused, and it was him. This is the case I read about. He was previously accused of beating an inmate in Shelby County in a 2016 lawsuit, and I read about that. So he had a problem from the very beginning. He should have never been hired to be a police officer for the Memphis Police Department. So he gets hired in August of 2020, right? This is 2023. He gets put on a specialized unit in a very short period of time. He's getting empowered with a lot of extra power and authority. And then this happens. We can't just say it was just his bad behavior, his misjudgment. We do have to look at the police department. I'm with you right there, Real Brooklyn. We got to look at the police department. And the police departments all across this country are probably all guilty. This is what retired Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey said. They all are guilty. And the sad part about it is that the stuff that we have been calling for, whether it's for the George Floyd Justice for Policing Act, it doesn't get to that level of corruption. It doesn't get to that level, to the point of local departments, local police chiefs making decisions, putting police officers with bad records on these specialized units. It doesn't get to the heart of that. Sandy, you said, I agree with the chief has to resign. Another young man has come forth being treated to a beating too. And this is a black woman who serves as the chief of police office, the chief of police. And because of this, she has to step down, because there's no way you didn't know. There's no way that you didn't know what type of men, what type of officers you were dealing with as part of this unit. Look, I got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to continue to take your thoughts about the latest developments around this. That Tyre Nichols looked like he may have been murdered simply for nothing, folks. He didn't violate any traffic laws. He didn't do anything wrong, according to the latest documents coming from Memphis Police Department and other institutions, law enforcement agencies there. He died for nothing. We'll continue the conversation on the other side. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now
We have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We have been talking about the latest developments in the Tyre Nichols case, where some new documents giving us some more details about what happened on that evening on January the 7th when Tyre Nichols was pulled over by 5 Memphis police officers. What actually happened? What led to him being stopped? What led to him being brutally beaten? And unfortunately, what led this situation to becoming a murder? I just want to take a couple of more comments from you. So post your comments in our chat as we're streaming live on YouTube and Facebook and Black Star Network. We would love to hear from you as well. But folks, so many of you have been upset about the fact that this latest set of documents coming out of the Tennessee Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission. This is a part of the training group that's supposed to be, teaching and training officers how to resolve conflict, how to deal with situations like this, right? And they have found that Demetrius Haley, one of the former Memphis police officers, pulled Tyre Nichols over in a way that was unjustified. He pulled him over. Demetrius was on his phone. He was wearing a black hoodie, and he did not state explicitly what traffic violations Tyre Nichols had committed. And it leads us to just wonder, what is the motive? What was the motive for this fatality? What really happened? Why did this happen? And, Real Brooklyn, you checked in and you mentioned we may never know the full story behind this case. But there have been, outside of the 5 police officer, there was the 6th officer, former officer Preston Hemphill. This was the white officer that pulled Tyre Nichols out the car, the same white officer who said on video, I hope they stomp his ass. Then you had 7 more officers that were disciplined for their involvement. We know that there was some, the 5 police officers, the 5 black police officers filed false police reports as to what led to the beating of our brother. All of this smells of a cover-up, folks. It smells like I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but it's just not cutting the mustard. And we have been mourning the loss of our brother. This has once again reignited the conversation between about the relationship between the police and the black community, reignited the conversation about protocol. It reignited the call for us, for many folks to say, hey, we need to have a national intervention, some type of federal policy put in place to stop this madness. But all of that could have been prevented if Tyre Nichols would have just been left alone that night. All of that had happened as a result of Demetrius Haley pulling over the car that Tyre Nichols was in for no reason. Damon, you checked in, my brother Damon. You said my son is 18, 5'9", and has had a full beard since his freshman year. Him having an encounter with the police is what I worry about every time he leaves the house. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. I could only imagine, brother Damon. My son is not at that place yet, but I think about it all the time. All the time, brother. Karen, my sister, you checked in and said Merrick Garland needs to open an investigation. This is not acceptable. There must be more video footage from area cameras. Remember, Karen and Damon and Real Brooklyn and everyone, y'all remember we mentioned there's actually 20 hours of footage, up to 20 hours of footage about what happened, what went down, all of the details. Then I just read that there were some cell phone cameras, some folks that were on scene, some witnesses to this tragedy on scene. So they got some cell phone footage as well. And that extra footage, remember now that the state's attorney's office, the prosecutor said that the city was planning to release that new footage in the next couple of weeks. That announcement was made last week. So this case has not truly been resolved. Justice is still far off. And you know what? At this point, I think there needs to be a cleaning of house, folks. You know what I mean? And I'm beyond the point of, oh, they're black, so therefore, no. If the chief has to go, she has to go. The officers got to go. They murdered a man on camera. Every single person that was involved, the paramedics, they need to go. They need to be complicit. They were complicit in that man not getting the proper medical care in an urgent manner. They need to go. They need to be found criminally negligent, criminally liable for Tyre Nichols' death. I'm serious. Because if you don't start cutting folks off or rolling heads, this stuff is going to continue to happen. And we can't afford this anymore. Not just Black America, but across this country, folks can't afford this anymore. We can't keep seeing this brutality and hoping on a policy. And when at the end of the day, it may never, ever truly bring the type of resolution that we are all seeking. So we're going to certainly keep our eyes on it. I'm going to do my due diligence to make sure that you can stay posted on this. And I appreciate y'all for being a part of the conversation. Look, I got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to talk about Operation Brainstorm from the National Headache Foundation and what they're doing for veterans and for those who served in our armed forces. So stay with us. That conversation is up next with us here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, welcome back to the Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. We're going to shift gears now to talking about policing to talking about healthcare. And we're talking about healthcare particularly for our veterans, those who have been serving in the armed services and doing the great work of protecting our freedom here in the homeland. Now, today we're joined by our very special guest, Mr. Thomas Dabberton, who serves as the CEO of the National Headache Foundation, who's going to give us some insight about their latest efforts called Operation Brainstorm and how these set of listening sessions that they're having all across the country will help to improve the quality of life and more particularly the health care for those who have served. Tom, thank you so much for joining us here on The Culture. We truly appreciate you, sir.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And as you said, we owe a debt of gratitude to those who serve in the armed forces.
Absolutely.
And make our lives free as they are, and to provide us with the opportunity even to have this conversation. And unfortunately, what we found is that veterans actually have migraine at a higher rate than the regular population. So about 15% of the adult population have migraine. The veteran population, it's about 35%. So it's significantly more. And what we're doing through the National Headache Foundation is conducting a series of listening tours where we're going out and we're having specialists in the field of headache medicine go out and listen to veterans, to their issues, to the symptoms and triggers and the experiences that they're having with migraine, and to also get those veterans help. So there are a lot of therapies out there, acute and preventative therapies, but many times veterans don't report their symptoms. They don't report their situations to their doctors, and we're trying to turn that around and give them the chance to learn from us, learn from the information that we've gathered over the years on migraine, on how to best treat and prevent migraine.
So, and Tom, and I appreciate you for this work, and it begs the question, the fact that veterans, they experience migraines at a higher rate than other citizens of the country. Is that because they have toured, they have served in the military, they've gone overseas, they have been parts of, combat and battle? Is that all because of that experience?
Absolutely. I could have said it better myself. I mean, you've summed up the reasons. Let's face it. Veterans are being exposed to a lot of things that basically we know help trigger migraine. Everything from changes in schedule to flashing lights, obviously, to noise, to we know that, for example, the situation covered under the recently passed PACT Act, the different burn pits. There are so many things that a veteran is exposed to. Explosions and gunfire, all of those things can certainly contribute to helping cause migraine. And Again, when you think about what they've done for us, we certainly owe them a debt of gratitude, and we want to make sure that they get the help and they get the assistance that they need and they deserve. And again, it's not just that they deserve it and need it, but it's also so readily available. There are so many different therapies. We see the ads on television, for example, for different medications that can treat migraine. Many of those treatments can actually prevent migraine. So rather than have have the pain and have the discomfort that people associate with migraine, there are opportunities available so that veterans don't even have to go through those things if they can get the proper care, if they can get the proper diagnosis.
Now, let me ask you this question, Tom. Does this issue affect, and not to just make it a racial issue, but because we're talking to a lot of Black people across this country, I mean, how does this issue affect Black veterans? Are you finding that Black veterans are less likely to get the help, or they have less access to the health care that they need? Or is there any disparity between the Black veterans getting treatment versus white veterans?
Well, I don't think there's necessarily a disparity in getting the treatment, but asking for the treatment could certainly be an issue. Seeking treatment, once again, there also, I think, is a lot to be considered as far as certainly there are a number of Black veterans. The ratio of Black veterans is quite high, and when you're talking about 35% of all veterans, I would think that one thing is for sure, migraine affects everyone. Migraine doesn't basically distinguish between races and cultures. It affects everyone. But when it comes down to getting that treatment, that certainly could be an issue, and it's something that we want to make sure doesn't exist, because it's one of those factors that shouldn't exist, right? We have treatments. We have the ability to make available those treatments through the Veterans Administration, and those who have served, whether they're Black, white, or any other race or minority, have the right to get that service through the Veterans Administration. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that we educate the population on what they're actually experiencing. Unfortunately, there's some people that don't even realize that they're having a migraine.
Right.
They know that they have this pain in their head, right? They feel this sharp pain, but migraine isn't just a pain in the head. It can also create all kinds of other problems like nausea. For example, it's very common with migraine to have some sort of an occlusion. We call them auras to their vision, and many people don't realize that they're having a migraine. So we need to make sure that they're better educated on what is a migraine and then how to get treated for it.
So the first part of this listening session was actually held on February the 7th. We're talking about 2 days ago. Am I correct, Tom?
Yes.
And what is the ultimate goal for Operation Brainstorm?
Well, the goal for Operation Brainstorm is based on, as you described before, the respect that we owe our veterans to make sure that they get the proper care and the proper education about migraine. So just to give you an example, I myself have migraine, but I know what the triggers are. I know what the symptoms are before it comes on. There are a lot of people, a good portion of the population, who don't realize that some of the things that you experience at the onset of a migraine might also be able to tell you that, here comes that migraine, that full force migraine with all the pain and the headache. And if you do certain things, you might be able to reduce the possibility of getting a migraine, or it might be a trigger that tells you, okay, now it's time to take an acute therapy that can help me address that migraine, so that you don't have to go through the pain and suffering.
I think it's interesting, Tom, and maybe you can help me to understand this. I mean, we in this country, we often like to tout the fact that our veterans, those who have served, my sister have served, my father served, those who have served are, kind of at the top of the list. They can get free things sometimes, and, during special occasions and all of those things. It's a lot of pomp and circumstance. But the more and more I talk to individuals like you, those who work in healthcare for veterans, those who work to try to get veterans homes. It seems like we're sorely lacking in this country in really taking care of veterans once they get back home to the mainland. And I'm just saying across the board, black, white. And I know you here have heard the stories. I'm not privy to some of those conversations as much as you are, but does that seem to be the case? I mean, that's just my observation on it, that we don't do enough to take care of our veterans where they come back home, they are welcome, their bills and disability and healthcare needs are addressed, their families are taken care of, and they are relieved of the stress of coming back into civilian life. I'm not hearing that quite as much. We love to talk about at the football games, but on the other side, it still seems like there's still a lot of ground to cover to make sure our veterans are taken care of.
Well, I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of ground to be covered when it comes to taking care of veterans as a whole. And you mentioned there's the homeless issue, for example, of veterans that also exists that needs to be addressed. And you mentioned family members. I mean, we owe them again a debt of gratitude. We do things like we say thank you for your service when we see a veteran, right? We recognize what they did for us. For those of us who didn't serve, we recognize, we appreciate what they did, but yet they're lacking. When they come back, they're lacking in certain services that we need to make available. And in the case of migraine, it's not that the services aren't available. It's that in some cases, veterans are often taught when they're in the military to quote unquote suck it up, right? They have to be able to perform under the worst possible conditions known to man, because they're there to defend us. And so they're given this approach that I hear time and time again from veterans, that we're taught to suck it up. And so many times veterans come back with that attitude that, well, I just have to endure this. I have to live with this. And that's not the case. Look, once you served, you're out of the military, you're entitled to these things. Right. Congress spends a lot of money and a lot of time creating all these programs. And what we're trying to do is make sure that every veteran knows that when it comes to migraine, there are programs available, there is treatment available that can help you with your migraine. All you need to do is ask for that help. And it's not as simple as just going in and let's just say that you were my doctor at the VA. I just can't go in and say, doctor, I have a migraine, because I may not know that I actually have a migraine. What I have to do is I have to be trained to understand what the symptoms are, what the triggers are, and write those things down. We always talk about keeping a migraine diary. For a lot of veterans, they don't do that. They go in to see their doctor. And I talked to one doctor at the VA who said, veterans often come in and they will come in and talk about the obvious things. They'll say, I have pain in my shoulder. I have, I have this condition or that condition. And headache is basically kind of an afterthought. And it shouldn't be, because if you're having a migraine headache, then you can't function. You can't do the things that you're doing. And we want those veterans to be able to enjoy their lives. After all, they gave their life for us. They put their life on the line. When they come back, they should be able to enjoy their life and be able to not have to endure migraine on top of everything else.
Absolutely. Folks, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we'll continue our conversation with Mr. Thomas DeBurton, who is the CEO and Executive Director of the National Headache Foundation, as we talk about healthcare for veterans. Stay with us. The conversation will continue here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, We're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Folks, welcome back to the show. We have been talking to Mr. Thomas DeBurton, who serves as the CEO of the National Headache Foundation, as they're talking about their new listening session, a tour of conversations that they're having across the country about healthcare for veterans, particularly those veterans who suffer from head trauma and have experienced high level of migraines that can be very, very debilitating, migraines that can take a person down. And the National Headache Foundation is doing its part to make sure that we cannot forget, one, about the veterans who serve to defend us, but two, to make sure that these veterans have the access to healthcare needs so they can be properly treated. Thomas, thank you so much, sir, for being with us again. I want to share with you just a couple of the remarks from our watchers, our online culture crew, because some of them are actually veterans. Conscious Thought, he checked in and said, look, I'm a veteran of the United States Air Force and was medically discharged due to head injury trauma. I suffer from chronic migraine headaches from the injury. Needs to be an expansion of treatment options. What would you say to Conscious Thought?
Oh, I'd absolutely agree with him. You know, there are 19 headache centers of excellence within the VA system. That means there are 19 locations throughout the United States where there's a specialization on migraine. When you look at how large this country is, there needs to be more. The good news is that the Veterans Administration has been authorized to add another number of centers, but getting people to a headache specialist is often a challenge in the United States because there are about 1,100 headache specialists nationwide. And just in the general population, there are about 40 million individuals with migraine. So that means those 1,100 specialists would have to see 38,000 patients each.
Jeez. And so this brings me to this question of the existence of the National Headache Foundation, because I don't think a lot of people knew that such a foundation was even present.
Well, thanks to you and others, we're getting the word out. I mean, we've been around for 53 years. We're headquartered in Chicago, but we're certainly a national organization. And our focus is, again, to create awareness, to create advocacy, to provide funds for research, and to educate both the general public and also practitioners about migraine. When you look at the nation's medical system, there are about 650,000 primary care practitioners. Those are the people that you and I go and see, and veterans see them as well. That's the first step, kind of in the process. A lot of those practitioners have not been properly trained on how to diagnose and treat migraine, and so before you can even go see a headache specialist, you often go see the primary care practitioner. But if they don't know how to diagnose it, if they don't know how to treat migraine, you're not going to get to that specialist. And that's a sad commentary on a great medical system. We have a wonderful medical system in this nation, but we need to get more people trained so that they know how to diagnose and treat migraine.
1,100 practitioners.
Yes.
40 million people, that number's going to stay in my head all day today, Tom. Trust and believe.
And let me just say, we have right now, we have an app-based training program for doctors and nurse practitioners and physician associates, and they can actually get it off their phone. They can pull that training up and they can get 2 hours of continuing medical education credits so that they can truly understand and treat migraine. 2 hours sounds like a pretty short period of time, but you know what? Most physicians get less than 2 hours of class instruction when they're in medical school about migraine.
Jeez. Sandy asks, can you ask Tom how far or how long have your department been gathering data inclusive of possible suicides? Talk about that for us, please.
That's information that's ongoing. It is there clearly is a concern. There's a lot that we don't know. So the good news is there was a study by Yale University recently that basically that it came up with the definition that there's about 35% of the veteran population with migraine. We need to do a lot more. And part of these listening sessions also allows us to gather information from those veterans. We're asking that those who attend, if they can give us their email address, for example, so that we can follow up and we can survey them and get more information so that we're better equipped to lobby the government on behalf of veterans, so that we can work with the VA to develop basically better programs to serve veterans. So all the information that we can gather right now in this first step of Operation Brainstorm is going to be very, very helpful for many years to come.
Tom, and then this is just me just wondering, is there any connection between severe migraines and what we see in athletes with CTE? Is there any connection with that? Are we seeing any signs of some level of CTE in our veterans?
Well, again, I don't want to comment on information that I don't know or information that hasn't been properly gathered. But what we want to do through Operation Brainstorm is we want to gather that information. We want to, for example, gather more information about individuals who maybe have had a traumatic brain injury, who, as you said, CTE, those things those exposures, how has that affected their migraine? Has that, basically made those migraines more prevalent? Has it affected their treatment? We want to get all that information. And the fact is that you would think that we have a lot more information about the plight of veterans with migraine. And the fact is that it's the other way around. We probably know more about the civilian population and the impact of migraine on them than we know about veterans. And we're trying to turn that around and gather more information.
Absolutely. Danita checked in and said, my significant other has the same issue as you and has tinnitus as well. This is definitely something that needs to be fought for better treatment of veterans.
Absolutely. And Danita's significant other has done something that, we all benefit from, right? He or she served, and they served in the armed forces for our benefit. And now we need to do something nice for them. We need to do the right thing for them. We need to make sure that they get treatment, that they have access, that we have all the information and all the data that we need so that we can assist those individuals who basically assisted us all these years when they served in the armed forces.
Absolutely. Crystal checked in. Tom said, my husband is a veteran and he has migraines and only an ER visit helps. Thank you so much for this information. Can that change? Because if he's just going to an ER, he would need to go to a specialist, I'm assuming, at this point, right?
Absolutely. We're working actually with the College of Emergency Physicians right now on getting better information out to emergency rooms. When you go to an emergency room, you get that one page handout that tells you about following up with your physician. And we're actually working with them to rewrite that information so that people get the proper information. But she's so right. Look, emergency rooms are there for emergencies. And sometimes your migraine can be an emergency. But wouldn't it be nice that you didn't have to sit around in an emergency room for 8 hours? Instead, you could get that treatment and you wouldn't have to do that. Again, there are so many individuals that have migraine that could probably benefit from some of the treatments that exist that some of those migraines could be prevented in the first place. That's what we really want to get to.
Tom, I know we got a few moments left, and I want to make sure that we put out the information about your next stop on this listening tour, which is coming up to be on February the 13th at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. Talk to us about what folks can expect at that stop.
Well, we're hoping, of course, that's going to be our national announcement, if you will, and we're hoping that it garners a lot of coverage by the news media, and that people learn about the program and then are driven to our website so they can find out when the listening tour is going to be near them. The hope is that in the next year, we're going to hold at least 20 different visits throughout the United States so that we can access the veteran community. We can give them the chance that not only for them to give us information, but mind you, we have at each of these listening tours, we're going to have one of the top headache specialists in the nation actually there to listen and to help those that attend in talking about their individual needs. It's just a way of giving back. And the Headache Foundation, again, we're committed to making lives better for anyone with migraine, but especially the veterans.
And a part of this listening tour is that you're inviting not just the veterans, but also their families to be a part of the discussion and to be a part of the session. Of course, there's no cost to attend, and you're giving out free migraine survival kits. So as you're going to each city across the country, you're talking about Washington, D.C., you're going to be visiting Chicago and Detroit and other places, that you're giving out these free migraine survival kits as well.
Yeah, in fact, I'll hold one up right now. This is one of the migraine survival kits. It has a series of items in it, from a cold pack to basically an eye patch covering, so that if you're affected by light, we can reduce the light. It has a pill pack in there, earplugs, basically common sense things that can help you through a migraine attack so that you can reduce the impact of that migraine attack. And again, it comes in a nice little case that people can carry with them. And when they have a migraine, they're able to once again reduce the impact. And that's what's so key.
And Tom, we got about 30 seconds. So how can people sign up for this listening session or register? Where can they find all the information?
The best place to go to is to our website, headaches.org. You can access this, of course, also through Facebook and through other social media, but go to headaches.org. You'll find all kinds of great information about the National Headache Foundation and about what we can do to help not only our veterans, but also the veteran families and civilians who have migraine, and we can make a difference. And we so much appreciate the time that you've given this afternoon for us to be on with you and to talk about this program. Again, we owe our veterans a debt of gratitude.
Yes,
this
sir.
is one way that the foundation is paying that debt back.
Absolutely. Thomas DeBurton, serving as the CEO and the executive director of the board for the National Headache Foundation. Thomas, thank you so much, sir. We truly appreciate your time for sharing this important information. And I know that a lot of people are going to gain from what was being discussed today. Again, folks, make sure y'all go to headaches.org to get more information from the National Headache Foundation about their listening session and so much more. Tom, thank you so much for being on The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about what's going on with Black college students. And a new report say that Black college students are less likely to graduate. We'll talk about that issue and so much more with my man, Brother Sinedu Wakofor, in a few moments. So stay with us. That discussion and more is coming up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now We have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show and welcome back to the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. First and foremost, before we jump into our next conversation, I want to encourage you to make sure that y'all do your due diligence to continue to show your support for Black Star Network. If you've been enjoying the discussions, and some of these discussions are things that we have been talking about nationally, and some of these discussions, like the one we just had with Mr. Tom DeBurton from the National Headache Foundation, discussions that are set up to inform you about what's going on with yourself, with your family, what's going on in the communities and with the country that we live in. Make sure that you show your support. Black Star Network is an incredible platform where you can get news and information like no other place. So make sure you check us out. Go to our website today, blackstarnetwork.com. Make sure that you subscribe to us, that you download the app on all of your devices. Make sure that you also let your friends and family know. And of course, make sure that you show your financial support. Now, you can give, and that will be super, super helpful. And you can give in a number of different ways, folks. Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, however it's convenient for you, because every dollar matters. Every cent matters. And so your support is truly, truly the engine behind this phenomenon that we call Black Star Network. Your support is pushing this movement of establishing an online digital space for Black media like never before. So make sure you do your due diligence. Go to blackstarnetwork.com. Also follow us on our social at Black Star Network on IG and Twitter as well. All right, folks, for the next conversation is something that I think that we have been kind of talking about in the peripheral, but now there is some new information, some new details about another phenomenon that unfortunately may require us to step up our activities around. And this is the phenomenon that they're showing, that Black college students are less likely to graduate from college. Yeah, folks, take a look at this. And this blew me away when I came across this information about, where our students are. But then after I thought about it, I sat down and I really thought about and reflected on what is the Black college students' experience right now, especially at HBCUs. But looking at HBCUs, looking at PWIs, what is the Black college experience? And so I wanted to have a conversation, and I'm really, really excited to have this discussion with my brother Shanadu, who has been working in, the student and achievement space. Of course, he works in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But what is going on with the Black college students? Here's the latest. according to this new report. Take a look at this, folks. According to a new Lumina Foundation Gallup report from 2023, State of Higher Education Study, it released earlier today, it found that Black students in less racially diverse programs are more likely to feel discriminated against, physically and psychologically unsafe and disrespected, leading them to abandon their higher education goals. Now, there are so many numbers in this report, so we just wanted to glean and to take some of these numbers out. Only 35% of Black Americans have associate degrees or higher, which are essential for economic and social mobility. And Black student enrollment has also declined over the last 10 years. The study also found that 34% of Black students at private for-profit institutions are more likely to report discrimination than those at public, 17%, or private not-for-profit institutions, 23%. This is especially concerning because, according to Brown, who is one of the scholars around this situation, because Black Americans primarily attend private for-profit institutions and are spending a lot more money and time on credentials that they may not be able to receive. Wow. The study also, check this out, the study also recommends that more people of color be placed in leadership positions at educational institutions to minimize feelings of discrimination, and institutions and policymakers need to ensure curriculums are inclusive and campus conduct policies spell out zero tolerance for discrimination. So Black students are less likely to attain college degrees, to finish college because of discrimination and external responsibilities. I want to bring my brother in, Brother Shanadu, and get his take on this situation. Shanadu, thank you so much, brother. Always good to connect with you.
Always good to be here with you, Farajii.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's look at this. You worked in the Black college space. You of course, you came from an HBCU. You've done work, as a student. You've done work as a grad, as a professional, working professional. Is this surprising to you, though, that Black college students are actually graduating a little bit less because of discrimination, psychological stress?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a shocker to me, simply because look at what Black folks have to face in the country as a whole. You have to start from there. There is so much, I remember discrimination. I think when people see discrimination, they only think about race. Discrimination could also be not understanding situations that certain students, have to work full time to go to school and go to school full time. As certain students, they can't just buy a textbook as quickly. I remember even being a student, that was one of the most interesting things. Luckily, my father worked, in the institutions of higher learning. So he was able to get me my books immediately. But students weren't able to get books on the same times. So can we start the lesson at the same time? You have to share. I think it's quite unfortunate that certain life things that are happening in people's lives are not considered in this place, because when all of those things are compounded on top of discrimination, when folks don't feel comfortable to discuss this and feel like they can be affirmed, a lot of people could feel less than for having these issues, and it makes it easy to just drop out or go back to what you're doing, or just go back to work and work more hours to take care of the family or situations. It's not a shocker here, and it's if something doesn't change, you might see an increase in these numbers.
I definitely would think that we may see that. And, I was having a conversation earlier today about this issue of talking about feeling psychologically unsafe, about the stress. And, we're going to be working, folks. I'm going to just give y'all just a sneak peek that we're going to be having, we're going to be introducing a brand new segment to talk about mental health and wellness very, very soon. And starting this month, God willing. And we're going to deep dive and more into these conversations about, taking care of ourselves, how we can reclaim our health and wellness needs. But I think that's the part about it. The part is that we often think that the Black college student has it all together. we think that the Black college student is quote unquote, which they are, but you can, you think, oh, okay, they're resilient. They're coming from, even though they might not come from, all of them may not come from quote unquote ideal home life situations, that they can handle whatever that life throws at them. But you got to remember, like when you're 18, 19 years old, and like you're saying, just the smallest things can sometimes serves as roadblocks. Not getting your textbooks, right? Stressing over financial aid. You know what I mean? Trying to figure out, like, here you are in class, and you got to think in the back of your mind, like, damn, I know my parents not making that much money. College costs this much. I'm not getting this much in scholarship. And you got to stress about this at 18, 19 years old. You see a mother, trying to pull so many different shifts and trying to do so many different jobs just to pay for your college education. And you may feel guilty. You may start to carry some real guilt about going to school because it's putting so much of a stress and strain on your mother, your grandmother, your auntie, your daddy, whoever, right? And this worries them. Then you come into a situation, you might go to a PWI. You got to deal with the racism and the level of discrimination, right? The bias. And it's like, we expect Black college students to have it together. And I know that they don't. And I've heard so many stories, Brother Shanadu, where people that are my age, right, have come to, and we've had these conversations like, yo, when I went to college, like I ain't have no support. I had no support. Like my mom couldn't do nothing for me. My dad wasn't around. This wasn't happening. That wasn't happening. And they had to persevere through that time with no one really there. They had to either rely on a professor or a counselor or somebody. It's a lot, bro. It is a lot to put on a college student. Is there any way that we can relieve, at least have a conversation about this? Because this is going to bite us in the ass in a couple of years, Shanadu.
Yeah, I think two things I want to mention. For one, that idea of resiliency and strength, we have to be careful with that because we, in my opinion, most of our resilience and strength as Black people are because of something else, because of adversity. Not saying that we don't have these skills, but a lot of them are being exemplified because of what we're trying to fight against. So sometimes leading with our strength is dangerous because then it leaves us no room to be not strong, or it leaves us no space to not have a moment of, this is difficult for me. I need to figure this out, and so on and so forth. But I would also say, like, the older generation will say to the younger generation that, you all are too soft. I use this, or sensitive or whatever, back in my day. And I use this example all the time. A broom swept so a vacuum could vacuum and a Roomba could Roomba. But if you look at all three iterations of these devices, they are all an improvement of bristles on a broom. I say that to say that each generation is able to experience something that the latter one did, building upon that. A lot of my parents and folks from my parents' generation, they didn't have the luxury to have mental health be even a thing. They didn't have a luxury of, maybe their neurodivergence being something that people actually cared about. So I think it's important that we put a lot more emphasis that some of this newer generation, they're actually experiencing a lot of those things that the generations before could not, whether it's because they wouldn't allow themselves or the time wasn't right to do such. I think in this scenario, there needs to be a lot of not just mental health services for the children and young people, but there also needs to be care. It's okay that this is happening. Like, how do we work through this? I think sometimes this idea of figure it out, that's dangerous. Like, why does every generation have to figure it out if we can stand on the shoulders of those who came before,
I wholeheartedly agree. I got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, Shanadu, I want to continue this part of the conversation because I'm seeing so many of our online culture crew members saying, look, I didn't have the support. Like back in the 90s, people like, yo, when I went to college in the 90s, none of this stuff was around. And look, 30 years later, Sinead, 30 years later, we still at the same 25, 30 years later, we should not be in the same place with this generation. We should be much further along, bro. So I want us to continue the conversation. Folks, continue to post your comments in the chat on our YouTube page, on our Facebook page, and of course on Black Star Network. Let's talk about this new study that shows that Black college students are less likely to finish college, less likely to get their degrees because of discrimination, feeling psychologically unsafe, and so much more. What are your thoughts on that? Post your comments, and we'll get to them as much as we can on the other side. So stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about a new study that has shown that Black college students are less likely to earn degrees and to finish college for a number of reasons, some including discrimination, feeling psychologically unsafe, and so much more. And we've been having this conversation with my brother Sinead Wakorfor, who serves as a diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist. He's been working in the area of student achievement for years. And of course, he is a grad of the HBCU, the illustrious Morgan State University, as we have this conversation about the plight of the Black college student. Brother Sinead, we want to bring you back into the frame. And one of the things that I'm hearing, dear brother, is the fact that a lot of these students just don't feel supported. And it's incredible. And I'm so happy that our culture crew is sharing their personal stories about not feeling supported, that they feel like, you know what? There is no infrastructure to ensure that college students, Black college students today, go all the way through the process. See, we love the pomp and circumstance of graduating from high school. I always thought it was interesting. We put a lot of emphasis on graduating high school. Let me just tell y'all, folks. I mean, I get it. I mean, high school ain't that hard, though, you know? I mean, I see people rolling out the red carpet for high school graduation. And it's like, I mean, maybe 30 years ago, 25 years ago, we could have been. Nowadays, I don't think high school is that hard, bro. Like, now, we put a lot in. But then with the college grad, when you're talking about creating a space for a student to be supported to go to college, that's a different level of support, from everything from filling out the FAFSA forms, everything from taking tours of the colleges, right? Everything from talking, connecting your son, daughter, niece, nephew, your grandson, granddaughter to advisors, making sure that they understand the level of discipline that they're going to have in order to get up, especially if they're living on campus, getting up for school, getting ready to class, go to classes every day. I mean, there's a whole process, and it's still sad that a lot of our Black college students, they can get through some of that, but when it comes down to the discrimination, how do you prepare your college student for discrimination? How do you prepare them for feeling psychologically unsafe? And let me just throw this out there too, Sinead, and I want to get your take. Imagine going through all of that, and then you go to an HBCU. And we've been talking about it on this show, and then the HBCU, their facilities are falling apart. Or the HBCU is playing games with the money. Did I say something wrong? Huh? You got your financial aid secured. The next thing you know, you don't get no refund check. You don't get no. Or they tell you your refund check is gonna be paid toward the next semester. Joker, if I don't get that refund check now, I may not have a next semester. I can't buy no books off of next semester promises.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Talk to me, brother.
I was just on the campus the other day, actually, on Tuesday for, National HIV/AIDS Day. They did a program at Morgan, so I went there for that. And I was talking to some of the administrators. I'm glad you said that. People who I know, I'm like, hey, let me check in. And, the first thing I heard is that, these kids are so disconnected. We're going to see a big slew of young folk that are disconnected from people just because of technology. That's what technology does, It connects, but it also disconnects because some people are so connected to this that they only know how to socialize through this. I think what is very important is two things. One, for those that didn't have, this is very important, we need to seek. These are not the students I'm talking about. I'm talking about the adults who didn't have the things that the kids are now benefiting from. Seek some of those things, because sometimes it low-key sounds like jealousy. Like, well, you got all this and I didn't have all that. You should be fine. We got to be careful when we say stuff like that, because you don't know under what pressure. If you look at, Farajii, you correct me, the crack and cocaine epidemic was huge in the 80s and 70s. But look how drugs are abused now. And it's a lot of young kids, because it's this pressure that you have all of these opportunities. You should be doing better because I didn't have shit. And look at me. This generation cannot handle that. And just because you handled ED, that, and this is look, the slew of Black folk who were enslaved, 1700s, 1600s, 1800s, the folks that came up during Jim Crow, a lot of that generation couldn't handle what the others had. And that so is life. But we have to be careful in saying you should do better because if I had your opportunity, I would do better. That is a lot of pressure. And
huge.
If you follow the music of some of these young kids, some of these young kids are listening to music that is being portrayed as, I can't keep up. I don't want to be here. Nobody understands me. Yes, we know that that's the story of the young teenager and so on and so forth. But in our community, it's becoming more pronounced, where folks can't even talk to their parents, their family, about what's going on. We need to kind of change the groupthink of the support system, whether that be the church, the mosque, whatever, where the young people can feel comfortable and unjudged to have an idea, a thought, that maybe this is hard. It may not be hard to you, but maybe it's hard to me.
That is. That's true. That's true, brother. Sinead, that is so true, bro. And I think you're right. The pressure there that we haven't talked about. We've been talking about some of the external pressures, being Black at a PWI, talking about coming from a specific socioeconomic space, right? versus other people that you might be, you're a black college student you might be hanging out with. I mean, there are a lot of pressures going in. The other pressure is, and this is something I had to learn. And I know, look, I mean, y'all might be mad at me, but at some point when I think I was at high school, no, I was in college, where I was like, I'm going to study communications, I'm studying public relations and stuff. What is this the thing of a GPA? Like, you know what I mean? I'm jumping in my field. I'm already working in my field. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to be busting my head through no wall to try to get a 4.0 GPA and as if that's the only metric of success that I need to be attaining. You know what I mean? After a while, and I mean, I think that we should have this opens the door for others, for us to look at meritocracy as a whole in terms of our college and higher education experience, because we do put so much, get your A, and I get it. I'm not saying if you were an A student in college, more love to you. I wasn't. But guess what? I worked to be proficient in the spaces that I'm proficient in. I not just say, oh, I'm not an A student, so therefore I'm a bum. No, you work, you get the experience, you learn you learn to be proficient. So I think there's a lot of conversation here. Let me go to my online culture crew. McCall, my sister, you checked in. Good to hear from you. You said, I believe that Black students need extra support when going to college. It is critical to a Black student graduating from college, from start to finish. Don't just show up to graduation. You weren't there at the at the initiation. Come on, man. For real. From start to finish. When you put your Black college student in school, they need to see your face every year. From start to finish. McCole, great point. Thank you. DeAndre, my guy, you said, Sinead, you made some good analogies. We definitely have to take a step back and analyze many aspects of our lifestyle and what we pass down to future generations. Absolutely. Absolutely, bro. Absolutely. Janelle, thank you, bro. Janelle, you checked in and say, look, some college students aren't quote unquote traditional students that look back home as a cushion or backup when things get rough. COVID showed us that many are effectively homeless and food insecure. And that's the point. How are you going to be focused on your education, or how are you going to feel psychologically safe when you got real life stuff going on in your life? You know what I mean? Trying to figure out where to live, how you going to eat, all of that stuff. And that's a lot to put on a person that is just kind of making their way out on their own into the world. 18, 19 years old. I'll never forget having these conversations. I told myself, should they do? It's not a shade on my own dad. But, he came from the school of thought that once you're 18, that you are grown, you're an adult. You out there, you leave home. You can't do that anymore. You can't just put an 18-year-old out, tell him, hey, man, fend for yourself, bruh. Sorry, sis, That's just not the time now. I think it's changed what? You like 25, you live at home till you're like 25.
26 is when the government cuts you off of your parents' health. That was a rough year for me, Farajii. I almost cried.
I mean, like you're not putting your child out at 18, man. Damon, I know you got your son. You said he was 18. You're not putting that boy out at 18. That's like sending them out to the wolves. Last thing, and see, this is a part of our culture too, because we believe that at 18 years old that you're supposed to have your life together. The average 18-year-old today does not have their life. They don't even have a clue. And I'm not saying all of them, but some of them really don't have a clue of what they want to do. And that's okay. That is really okay.
Yeah.
I think our community, we put so much emphasis on this age, on grades, that we're not giving them space to just grow in the way they need to grow. And see, when they don't meet those metrics, like back in, previous generations, 18, I was doing this, 21, I had this, 25, I owned my first house. That's a different time. All right, go ahead, Sinead.
I got to. That last comment was so astute. Half of folks don't even know that a lot of kids, Black especially, are going to school to eat and sleep, just to have those two things taken care of. A lot of folks don't have families to go back to. A lot of folks are escaping what their towns are, because think about it. You have a better chance of getting a college loan to go to a school anywhere in this country at a lower rate than you do of getting a $10,000 loan to start a business or do anything else. So a lot of folks, and this is dangerous, they're using school as a springboard, as a safety net, just to figure out to buy themselves time. And I saw this because check out the breaks. Spring break, Christmas break, Thanksgiving break. Some folks could not, they had nowhere to go. They had nowhere to leave to. I think we have to just be very cognizant that with the time comes change on all sides. Right. One thing I respect about, other cultures is what they push on their children or say to their children are based on the signs that those children are showing, because that can save you time and money. Because remember, and I always tell this to people, who I'm the most scared of as a young adult, I'm 30 years old, I'm the most scared of my colleagues who graduate with very high terminal degrees, who did not get the proper social rearing, the proper communicative, because now these people are also trying to date. Now these people are also in the hospitals, in engineering places where when it comes, how do I know this? Because I work with a lot of them. I can see some top tier. I mean, they can read you or write you out of any subject that you name. But social aspect of connectivity, where we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, where we're talking about self-efficacy, they shrivel. And that's very, 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 very dangerous. We have to remember that these kids will one day be adults. And if we are not focusing on what we could give them to be the best them that they can be, and that sometimes listening, and let's look at some of these dropout rates too. Forcing kids to go to school 2 years, most of the people that came to school with me did not graduate with me, because by the second year, they realized that this is not what they wanted, and they already got the loans. We can't set our kids up because we're going to pay for it, literally.
Yeah, we definitely going to pay for it. That's a great point. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, we'll dedicate just a little bit more time on this, because so many of you have been checking in, sharing your thoughts and your feelings and your personal experiences. We need to let folks know. So, folks, stay with us. More conversation about this topic on the other side, right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about this issue of black college students less likely to complete college, less likely to earn a degree because of external factors such as discrimination, feeling psychologically unsafe, and so much more. Having this conversation with my brother Sinead Wakofor, and of course with you folks. I know the chat has been phenomenal. So many of you have been checking in to share your personal stories and just given your observations, and I think many of you are feeling like the way I do, that there were some things that we were told when we first got into college that were highly important. And then after years of being out of college, we found out it wasn't even as important as they made it out to be, right? And of course, with COVID, of course, with the colleges around the country have now adjusted their curriculums, have adjusted their enrollment process, have adjusted, the importance of certain tests. Things have changed. However, with all of these adjustments, with all of these advancements in education, Black college students are still feeling like, you know what, this college degree may not be the best step for us. And we got to ask the question, what do we do? How do we not make sure that we are raising a generation that shuns higher education? Let me bring my brother back into the fold here, Brother Shanadu. Brother Shanadu, I'm so excited about this because so many people have checked in. My sister Corinna, she's been doing college readiness work for years, she's told me. And she said, I taught college readiness to 11th grade students for years. I made certain they were informed on resources and support available to them, as well as their parents that I hosted workshops for. Getting parents connected to the resources, making sure that there is an infrastructure for college students to feel supported, Black college students to feel supported. So Corinna, I truly appreciate you pointing that out. But everybody can't be in those workshops. You know it, and I know it. And I'm sure, Corinna, that you have had many conversations with students who show up either at these workshops by themselves or with parents who just don't look as interested. And that's the other part about it, right, Shanadu? Like making sure that if we're going to create this village mindset, that everybody has to feel like they have a piece, a stake in this process. Everybody has to feel like they have a stake in this process. What's your take on that, bro?
Yeah, this makes me really sad, but I have to say it. Parents, make time for your kids. And I know it's not your fault. And I know that economies of scales plays a big part in this, but how many friends do I know that did their FAFSA by themselves?
Come on, man.
I mean, a lot of people are just figuring in this generation of enlightenment, no kid should have to figure out anything on their own in that way. That's the point of parents, community, family. I was lucky my dad works in the university system, so I always had his help. But I remember hearing my friends struggle because they didn't know how to do this, or they're getting different documents from different parents if their parents are separated. Parents, step up for your kids. Be there. And guess what? I'll say this. Even if you don't know, I think it is so laudable for a parent to say, I don't know, son or daughter, but we're going to figure this out together. That in itself says so much. A lot of these kids are doing these things on their own, even from high school, finding the schools, applying.
Yeah.
We got to make time. I don't have kids, so I can't say I fully empathize, but we have to make time for our future, our children.
We do. And Sinead, what's the other point about this as we look at this is, again, going back to that piece I shared, where the study recommends that more people of color be placed in leadership positions at educational institutions to minimize feelings of discrimination. And institutions and policymakers need to ensure curriculums are inclusive and campus conduct policies spell out zero tolerance for discrimination. So you got three things. Mm-hmm. Black folks in leadership roles, making sure that the curriculums are inclusive, and that campus conduct policies allow for zero tolerance. Is this asking for too much, brother?
No, but there's another part that's missing.
Yeah.
There needs to be a level of autonomy for these professionals that we're talking about. Because a wise man once said, and he's right, that some of these guidance counselors are misguidance counselors, because we can't hire somebody who is supposed to be aid to Black children who may have not fulfilled their dream, where this is just another meal ticket for them to complete their journey, because then they might use that and misguide the children.
Yeah.
We also need these young paraprofessionals or professionals to be able to have the free latitude to educate that culture of people, Black people, based on the culture of the person, based on what that person relates to. I see it all the time in Asian culture where they get somebody from the community to help them. It's somebody who understands their culture. This can't be another, in my opinion, thing where we just hire more Black bodies that pacify a statistical misnomer. We need to get the best of the best and give them the tools. And when I say tools, that means freedom to talk and engage with Black children based on the culture. Do you know how hard it is I had a gentleman when I was in high school. I was not, I didn't grow up, poor or underprivileged, but I remember, as an African, my parents didn't buy certain American snacks all the time. Okay. So I was eating a lot of traditional food. That's all right. There was a teacher in my school who always made it something because he wanted me to feel some of the understanding that some of my classmates have. He's like, here, this is that. Really small things to most people, but it made a big difference to me. He used to tell me that, don't say to anybody that I gave you this because, I don't want to get in trouble. We have to kind of break some of these rules and these norms. And I don't know if anybody watches Abbott Elementary, but it shows a lot of what it's like. The reason why it's important to have Black folk teach Black kids, especially kids who are suffering from certain things that only Black people can understand and relate to, right? Because when a kid comes in at 7 o'clock or 7:30 in the morning, he doesn't have an attitude when he walks in there. He might be hungry.
Right.
And it's only that person of that culture, that professional, who would understand that. And that's even in college. So I just want to put that out there. With the implementation of more of these 3 professionals that you named, they need to be able to have the platitude or latitude, if you will, to be able to work with those of their culture in the way that makes sense to that culture.
And that's going to require a different level of engagement from the community, from the stakeholders, from the alumni, right? Like culturally, we still have to deal with that. We can't, and it's something, because as we're having this conversation and I see our crew sharing their thoughts about this, it's like it becomes traumatic for a lot of people. You know what I mean? Lana checked in. Lana, you said your mother, who had a master's degree, Lana said, my mom had a master's degree, took me to my dorm, dropped me off and told me, quote, don't come home. That's what we do. It's all we know. That's traumatic. That's traumatic. And then you got on the other side, like the issues of Black folks not being in position of leadership to help diffuse the discrimination, the conduct policies of other students that create the discrimination in some cases. And of course, you going into a classroom outside of an HBCU. If you go to a PWI, do you see yourself in the curriculum? Or are they still they salt and pepper the curriculum with a couple of and I'm not saying like a couple of mentions of our heroes and sheroes, but you don't fully see yourself as part of the curriculum that you're learning. When you learn medicine, you don't see Dr. Charles Drew. You may read about him, but you read more about Johns Hopkins than Charles Drew. You know what I'm saying? Or something. And it's like, that's traumatic. That's traumatic, right? And you can tell it's traumatic because guess what? We still remember stuff to the very day. The details. Lana, you still remember that. And how that made you feel. And so if we're passing that on to the next generation, you brought it up in the last segment, bro, we're going to pay for it. We're going to really pay for it. And I think, Miss Respect, you checked it and you mentioned you don't stop, you don't want to hear about bashing HBCUs. It's not necessarily about a bashing HBCUs when I mention that. Imagine going to a place and then you find out your dorm has some facility issues. It's not a bashing of HBCUs. I'm talking about the impact that has on your psyche, that you're supposed to be proud of your blackness, and yet you go into a space that's supposed to be black-led, black-oriented, full of black pride, and the conditions show that you almost treat it like you're a second-class citizen because you don't have the textbook. The place that you lay your head is dysfunctional. The teachers that you have aren't qualified. And I'm not just throwing this blanket statement on all HBCUs. I'm just using these using as an example that this creates the psychological stress and feeling of being unsafe. We got a few moments left. Sinead, you want to talk about that, bro?
Yeah, and you know I've come. If anybody knows, see, y'all don't know, he gonna start laughing. If anybody knows, Farajii knows, I done come a long way about talking about it. Oh man, I was something to be reckoned with for Morgan's campus. But I'll say this: Black community, it is not bashing to be critical of the community that I stand with, that I'm with. Okay, if I'm at an HBCU or I'm an HBCU student, and I want to change the consciousness and culture. That's what these schools have been doing forever. We can't be fearful of living at a better standard, of educating at a better standard. It is not about, condemning. It's literally what I do to HBCUs, believe it or not, is what I learned about this country. What's so great about freedom of speech and how this country runs. We can be critical about something that we love. We can, because we want to see better, right? We want to see growth. And I always tell people, it is with love I say the things that I say about HBCUs, because I wouldn't go anywhere else and say it, because I know that this place that I went to or that represents my folks, I want them to do better, and I want us all to be better, and so on and so forth. I think what happens is that everything, Black culture is to just keep passing things on. That's just the way it's been. We want it to be something else. When you know better, you do better.
You do better. My guy, Willie Frazier said, we're the only community told at 18, you on your own. Today, you need your own. When other cultures ignore that, community can deal with all of these issues. Absolutely. Absolutely. Danita, you said if we don't talk about it, we can't make things better. To your point, Sinead. Absolutely. And I think that to that point, as we close out, to that point, bro, we are at a time and we are at a space that we need to step up. Yesterday we talked about a little bit, I brought up the conversation, Sinead, about Black resistance. How are you showing Black resistance? And this is not talking about going against something. I'm talking about resisting in a sense of resisting what I think should be in the direction, resist positively. How are you standing for something? How are you in the flow with something? And at this point, there's a lot more energy that's taken to resist something than it is to go in the direction of something else, right? So how are we using this energy? We know all of these things exist: discrimination, racism. We know that Black HBCUs are underfunded. We know all of these things exist. But how do we work in tandem with all of these things, knowing all of these things? How do we make sure and ensure that the Black college students that are in our lives and our families and our friends' families and our networks are going to get quality education? That's the direction. Like, what can I do to make this a positive experience in spite of all of these negative things that may be happening? And that's where the community comes in. That's where family comes in. That's where your friends network comes in. That's where the community comes in. Right? And then we can start focusing on the resistance of going against the leadership, going against, government funding and all of that other stuff. But let's focus our attention on getting some positive things done, bro. And I think that's the place. Look, there is nothing more important than making sure that the next generation have a future. Because when they have a future, then we got a future. It's just very simple. I don't know what else to say, Sinead.
Just like that. Just like that.
When they win, we win.
Continue.
If they don't win, if they're not at the starting line, prepared, stretched out, ready to run the great race of life, here we are running, and they still at the starting line. The pistol has been pulled, and we're waiting to pass the baton, and they ain't running yet. And many of us are getting tired of running.
Well,
we just like F the baton, just throw that joint on the ground, like, man, they ain't
go.
they ain't coming. All right, Sinead, my brother, I appreciate you, man.
Man, it's a pleasure to be on. God bless you, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. God willing, we'll reconnect with you next week. But folks, oh man, we got to run the great race. We got to run the great race. Look, I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank y'all so much for being a part of the conversation. Let's continue the conversation. Make sure y'all follow me on my social media. I love to connect with you. You can hit me up at The Real Farajii on IG, Farajii on Twitter, and I would love to connect with you as we build our beloved community, as the great Dr. King said. And, of course, make sure you go to blackstarnetwork.com, show your support. Every dollar matters, folks. blackstarnetwork.com. Your support means everything to us. Your support passing the word out, sharing the word that we are on each and every day. We got great programming, sharing the word that we need their financial support, sharing the word about the content that we've created and that we put out. Subscribe to us on YouTube and on Facebook, and just make sure that you continue to support. A lot of you have done that, but for those of you who are new to this network, we welcome you, we thank you, and we hope that you will become an investor like so many other people have already become. So make sure you go to blackstarnetwork.com and do your due diligence to support great Black media. That's going to do it for me. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow to have more discussions and more conversations. I had another story, but we didn't have enough time to cover it today, so I'll just hold that story over. But I look forward to having that big discussion tomorrow or some other day. Also, folks, make sure y'all tune in for Roland Martin Unfiltered this Thursday night. You know, I got a special love in my heart for my Thursday night crew, Dr. Carr, Reese, Erica. So make sure y'all tune in to Thursday night on Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, make sure you do one thing. Never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. And, of course, streaming live on Amazon Fire Stick TV. So thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace.